Welcome to Beyond a Thought. This is just going to be a quick vlog video about my first experience with a troll and how you can deal with them. Be prepared though, because we're going to dig deep. I beat myself up a little bit for not posting over a few weeks, and so then I decided to do a mass post. I did a 1-hour interview and cut it up into sections to have 6 more uploads. I thought, hell, I might as well just hit the algorithm with whatever I've got, hoping that someone will find me in the sea of YouTubers. The mass post absolutely failed. I got maybe 10 views on each of the videos. Something else happened. I got my first troll. Technically not my first trolls though, as the first trolls I got in my comment section was with my interview with Hazard China Vlogs. They were technically attacking him and everything he was saying. Other than that, I did have a real life troll with a family member interrogating me with why I didn't ask Harry this about China, or how come he didn't say this about China. 1, I'm not China. 2, Hazard China Vlogs isn't China. He happens to be a white Australian man who's living in China as a reporter for one city, not the whole country. If you think that's a cop-out, then go check out his video where it explains more. We only know what we've personally experienced. Also, if you're going to be attacking China, then make sure you recognize what's happening on your own front step. Australia ain't perfect either. The troll this time felt like a personal attack against me. It was in the video Closing the Gap, where myself and Janelle Da Silva were talking about the Closing the Gap policy. The Close the Gap campaign aims to close the health and life expectancy gap between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and non-Indigenous Australians within a generation. The troll isn't attacking me personally, but the topic that I find so important. And that's the part that needs to be addressed here. This is riddled with inaccuracies, bigotry, and just plain ignorance. It's both uninformed and misinformed. So when I first read it, I didn't know how to respond. I was just in shock. I was in awe. I was stunned. Having an opinion is your favorite ice cream flavor, chocolate or strawberry, your favorite football team or your favorite sport, or whether Terminator 1 is better than Terminator 2. It's Terminator 2, by the way. These are tastes, hobbies, and entertainment. It's all subjective. What isn't having an opinion or being entitled to your opinion is discriminating against others. You need facts to be talking about any of this. I realize the best plan of action is not to respond, not to feed the troll. At least not feeding him with feelings. Feed him with facts. Don't call them names like racist or bigot, They may necessarily be true, but it's better to just give them the facts of the information. So let's now break down why this was so inaccurate, uninformed, and misleading. Because there's a lot here and we need to go beyond a thought. Okay, first part. Couple of things. Do you think your own television station at taxpayers' expense would help with news delivery in addition to the left-leaning ABC? Firstly, Roy, I'm a YouTube channel, not a television station. Secondly, there's no taxpayers' money here. If I was getting paid to make this channel by the government, don't you think I'd have a whole lot more content coming out weekly? For the ABC, you would find they are actually a lot more right-leaning lately. And this is because of the constant government budget cuts. They have to lean further to the Conservative government to keep themselves afloat. Although your question is, do I think my station would help with news delivery in addition to ABC? Sure, yeah, I guess. I don't really know what answer you want, but YouTube's a free market. If my channel can inform people who care about these issues with topics that are informative and give them the information they need, then great. Mission achieved, mission accomplished. Do you think $33.4 billion in Aboriginal welfare, $44,900 for every Aboriginal and pretend Aboriginal, would help level the playing field? Once again, Roy, you need to do a little bit more research. I'm not sure where you're getting this myth. You should watch my video about opinions. If you hear some crazy statistic, don't believe it straight away. You have to look for more sources of information. more areas that back up their claim, different sources of information. Don't just look at Channel 7, 10, or Sky News, and then don't just look at ABC or SBS. When it comes to Indigenous topics, look at Indigenous news sources. A simple search brought me to Indigenous X, which, like NITV, is credible. It's credible journalism because it's funded and backed by First Nations people. The title of the article is, I'm not even kidding, Debunking the 33 billion. Written by journalist James Saunders back in freaking 2019. First paragraph, he mentions how frustrating it is hearing the Indigenous people get freebies bullshit. When he heard the 33 billion myth, he was shocked. After buying a car, paying his HECS, and paying rent every fortnight, he was thinking, where's my cut of the 33 billion? He discovered it was from a report in 2017 for spending on Indigenous affairs, not Indigenous people, which is completely different. Roy is technically right about the 33 billion, but he's completely wrong about the $44,900 every Indigenous person gets in this country. Also, pretend Aboriginal, it's so bad. Let me talk about that next. But okay, here we go. Indigenous people don't get a free 44K each. Indigenous Affairs distributes 33 billion. And let me now read out what that means. Indigenous specific spending targeted is money spent on services and programs that are provided to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community specifically. And that can be directly identified and measured. Think of everything your community has, Roy. Hospitals, schools, libraries, shops, job agencies, freaking clean water to drink. That's what the $33 billion is for. These communities. On top of that, this report from 2017 came out because the $33 billion wasn't even being spent and measured properly. Even the fact on that number is wrong. Lastly, the article brings forth that non-Indigenous people cost the government $522.7 billion a year. Why aren't you complaining about that, Roy? Fact is, just like the $33 billion, it's money that needs to be spent for communities. Back to that other part, there's no such thing as pretend Aboriginal. You either are or you aren't. That's just so ignorant. There's a great book you should read, Roy. It's called Growing Up Aboriginal in Australia by Anita Heese. I am thinking of actually doing a video about breaking down Aboriginal stereotypes because I was hearing a lot of them during Invasion Day and the end of January. But the simplest answer is just don't say it. And maybe look into the effects of the stolen generation. How about the other... God, it's getting hot. Woo! Woo! How about being showered in benefits, grants, and specialist programs? Once again, what grants and specialist programs? This is another stereotype that Aboriginal people have to deal with on almost an everyday basis. For grants and specialist programs, like I said before, that comes under Aboriginal Affairs, which is 6% of all the other grants and specialist programs. Grants and specialist programs aren't only on offer for Indigenous people, just a select few, which is most commonly in Indigenous rural communities or rural communities that are predominantly an Indigenous population to help with closing the gap in education, housing and infrastructure built in locations that will never provide employment or a chance to contribute. There's so much wrong with this one. Mainly the last three words. Seriously though, Roy, where are you getting this information from? Have a read of Stan Grant talking to my country. Ironically, I actually have to thank you because it turns out this awful statement goes back into the closing the gap. I'm going to assume when you said with your basis claim in locations that will never provide employment, you meant rural communities? Okay, there's actually two things here. Building houses / infrastructure in remote areas and employment in those areas. This is so much bigger than assuming you are better than them for having a job, and there's a high majority of them that don't. This is a conversation about poverty. You can't abuse someone who is homeless for not having a job when they don't have a roof over their head. There's a great TEDx talk by Paul Farobes. How to fix poverty? Fix homes. He talks about an incredible Indigenous man named Yami Lester, who started a health council with a group of Indigenous people in his remote community with one simple plan: stop people getting sick. He realized that 80% of people coming through his medical center in terms of illness were infectious disease. He found this came from poor living environments. The medical doctor and the team came up with these 9 health goals to combat the health problem in these communities. They are washing clothes, wastewater, nutrition, crowding, animals, dust, temperature, and injury. The short is, most of these houses in these rural Indigenous communities weren't doing what a house needs to do. They found that only 35% had working showers, only 10% had safe electricity systems, and 58% had a working toilet. They found most commonly because lack of routine maintenance and faulty construction and design. If you are now thinking, Roy, that most commonly racist phrase, Indigenous people trash houses, only 9% was damage, misuse, or vandalism. So we can just put that statement to rest. With this information, the team went through a community with all Indigenous workers, cleaned up all their houses, and within a short period of time, the health problems went down by 40%. This is why homes and infrastructure are needed to be built in these rural communities. It's a health problem for a good living standard, not an employment problem. You can't get a job if you're not healthy enough to work, and you can't blame people for that. Now, for when you said the nonsense phrase, a chance to contribute, you have to be a little bit more specific. Because if it's your white perspective of contributing to a modern day colonized society, then no, they don't. Some Indigenous people don't care about that, nor do I blame them. Once again, read Stan Grant talking to my country. The contribution that many Indigenous people find most important is to their family, the environment, their community. People in poverty are not the problem. The problem is poverty. Aboriginal only medical facilities and employment agencies. Again, that's in the Indigenous Affairs! Again, that's in the Indigenous Affairs budget for rural communities. Again, that's in the Indigenous Affairs budget for rural communities. I can tell you, if there's Aboriginal only medical facilities and employment agencies, there are those for everyone else as well. These medical facilities and employment agencies are just in areas where it's a majority of Indigenous population. Just like a medical facility in every other area of the country. Or in the capital of Slovakia. Bratislav isn't just for white people, it's for anyone that lives there. It's just like the medical facilities or employment agencies in your area. They're for everyone and anyone that lives there. A personal taxi bus service and free meals to get your children to attend school. Other than the false claim of free taxi services, which if there was one kid that needed it, why would you send them a bus anyway? So sure, I guess so. But personal bus services and free meals to get Indigenous children to attend school is part of the Closing the Gap initiative. On the other hand, school bus services are generally free for rural communities anyway, no matter what your background is. The government will actually pay for it anyway. Now back to what I said before, school attendance is one of the Closing the Gap targets. It says, by 2025, increase the proportion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children enrolled in before full-time schooling, early childhood education, to 95%. As for the free meals, yeah, Keeping children well fed is important for young growing minds. So that's also part of the report. In 2019, the attendance rate for Indigenous children in really remote areas was 63% against 90% non-Indigenous children. The bottom line is, Roy, do you have a problem against Indigenous children wanting to get an education? The failed ATSIC program? What? Sure, ATSIC failed, but it was abolished back in 2005. So it's got nothing to do with it. This is about the Closing the Gap report. You say it was excruciating listening to us talk for 14 minutes. But I'm sorry, Roy. Did you pay any attention to what the video was about? Yes, we remember. This stolen land. Who are you, Roy? Ron Burgundy?
I'm Ron Burgundy?
I don't think you do remember, since you then ask, what is this stolen land? I suggest you read the highly successful Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe. Better yet, the incredible Living on Stolen Land by Emberlyn Quaimalina. It's only 60 pages and it's all written in prose. To break it down for you, Roy, it's called colonization. It began back in 1788, over 200 years ago. And Indigenous people are still feeling the effects of their land being stolen today. How do you think Japanese occupation would have worked out for you? That doesn't justify genocide. If Japan invaded and colonized this land, that's still colonization. The same as what the British have done. It's just a different language and culture. And I hate to say it, but it's an opinion that British culture is better than Japanese culture. When people say, if we didn't colonize here, someone else would have, that doesn't make mass murder, rape, slavery, and the stolen generation acceptable. It's wrong no matter who does it. Finally, Roy, you ended up saying, after all this, you expect me to embrace being called a racist? I'm a little concerned that you already believed that I was going to refer to you as a racist. Like I said, I feel it's best not attacking with feelings, but with facts. Let's just check to see if any of this is actually racist. Yep. And yes, you certainly generalized about a minority with stereotypes, baseless claims, and white supremacy. Yeah, that's pretty racist. For people to understand racist statements, you have to now be more inclusive to other cultures that aren't your own. My advice, if you watch the whole interview with Janelle De Silva, Roy, I'm sorry if all their knows are pretty annoying for you. Myself and all non-Indigenous people within this country need to start educating ourselves on the Aboriginal people. They have had to learn our culture. It's now our turn to learn theirs. Stop blaming Indigenous people for not wanting to live our colonized life. They have their own culture, their own way of living. We all need to start learning how they want to live and celebrate their own life. And also, stop referring to Aboriginal Indigenous people as othering. They're individuals. They all have their individual way of thinking. A culture or a race cannot be grouped into one way of believing. Aboriginal culture in this country is many cultures, not just one. When you look at the map of so-called Australia, it's like looking at Europe. You don't say that Italian people are the same as British people or German people or Slovakian people or any other people in Europe. They're all different. They're all different cultures. Just like Aboriginal cultures are all different cultures and ways of living and ways of thinking. So that pretty much concludes my vlog about how I dealt with a troll and how you can deal with a troll. Don't just respond to them automatically or straight away. Don't even feed them if you want. Just leave them. Let them be. At the end of the day, what's most important is that you have the right information, the honest information. You're not attacking with feelings or believing in just your thoughts and feelings. You have the honest truth of how things are. Thank you for going beyond a thought. Like this video to help it in the algorithm, because like I said, my other videos have been doing well. Comment in the comment section below with a statement or a phrase you know that's embedded with racism and how it's gone so wrong. And please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to be updated for the next videos. I need to get back those 4 subscribers. Please help me get back those 4 subscribers.